We're all here today because of the continued refusal of the Minister, this government and the state to respect basic principles of justice and laws, as well as the will and preference of survivors in relation to mother and baby institutions. At all stages, survivors have been met with paternalism, disregard, disrespect and attempts to undermine their position. Minister, in June 2021, you announced a plan for an independent expert to examine the testimonies given to the Commission through a human rights lens. Why? Because you know, I know, and I think we all know that the findings of the Commission's report were incorrect. But your decision to do this only came after months of sustained criticism from survivors, human rights experts and researchers concerning the Commission's methodology, treatment of witnesses and inconsistencies and overall poor quality of the final report. And its findings, down to the most basic things of no evidence of illegal adoptions, things that we all know happened. There was an overwhelming consensus that the review was necessary to correct the major issues with the final report as the definitive document on the long history of state and church abuse of children, girls and women in these horrific institutions. The review remains essential to respect the wishes of survivors and to meet our international human rights obligations and to inform redress. It was also around the time of the refusal of the Commission members to provide any form of accountability at this committee and the government's inability to act. You wouldn't extend the Commission, you wouldn't do anything. Everybody warned you that this would eventually fall back on you as a result, and here we are. Despite the fact that in June 2021 you had proposals ready for Cabinet, in August of this year, 14 months later, survivors discovered via Elaine Loughlin in the Examiner that you had abandoned the plan. In the words of the Tuam Mother and Baby Home Alliance, you, Minister, have denied members and those who provided testimony to the confidential committee the opportunity to have those testimonies reviewed by an independent expert with a human rights background as previously promised. Firstly, your opening statement says it all, I think, really. To quote you directly, you said, "I believe that a process with the capacity to record, preserve and recognise survivors' personal accounts presents the most meaningful opportunity to address the concerns expressed to me." You've satisfied yourself, but no one else in the process, not survivors, not campaigners, not human rights experts. Unilaterally, you have decided what is best, betrayed another commitment, and now we're trying to tell the people directly affected that that is the best thing. You know better than them. I'm wondering if you understand the arrogance and paternalism of your words today to those people. Secondly, in June 2021, you had a proposal ready for consideration at Cabinet. Over a year later, you decide significant legal complexities would arise in seeking to facilitate an external review of accounts provided privately and in confidence with the robust legal framework of a Commission of investigation. Why were these legal complexities not discovered before you announced the independent review? From your own accounts, you had an ill-prepared proposal which gave false hope to a highly vulnerable group of people. Thirdly, on your third point, and I quote, "I believe that such a review could not fully respond to the concerns of those who were unhappy with the record of their testimony created by the Commission." There are two issues here. In June 2021, a review was an appropriate mechanism to respond to survivors' concerns. Then in August 2022, it was not. You're contradicting yourself. And then there's the issue of deciding how to address survivor concerns, not asking them. Again, you, without input from those affected, are deciding for them. More paternalism. And do you not see those contradictions and that paternalistic attitude? I actually don't understand how there isn't any kind of shame with these inconsistencies and misleading people. Reading over all the documents, and actually, sorry, another excuse that you mention is that, and I quote again, "Government cannot, via a non-statutory process, retrospectively alter or interrogate the Independent Commission's findings or methodology." So you can interrogate the report via a statutory process. So why aren't you looking into that, or are the department looking into that? Reading over all of the documents and your statements and the initial announcement in June 2021, I can only come to one of two conclusions. So either the plan for an independent review was poorly prepared and did not stand up to any form of scrutiny and had to be abandoned, or the plan was opposed by your department or another state actor and you were shut down. Both are plausible from the evidence available to us. The disgraceful treatment of survivors with make it up as you go along approach, or the prevalent ingrained structural forces in government departments and state bodies not to provide survivors with justice. So which is it?
Minister?
Thanks, Chair. Just to come to a specific point, there was no proposal coming to Cabinet in June 2021. I'm not sure. I know there was some newspaper coverage of that, but there was no specific proposal. And indeed, in July of 2021, I think we were debating the issue in the Houses, and I spoke about trying to ensuring that the testimonies of persons who appeared before the confidential committee were on the public record. And I think I said explicitly then, I don't know how that's going to be done because we had nothing prepared at that stage. So just from my point of view, there wasn't a proposal in June 2021. On the wider issue, though, and you know, your statement of me ignoring will and preference of survivors and acting unilaterally. Over the course of my time in this department, I have met a very significant number of survivors. I've met groups, I've met individuals, I've met online, I've met them in the department or here, and also a significant number of survivors have come up to me on the street at events and just identified themselves to me. They said they were, you know, in such and such an institution or had been subject to an illegal birth registration. I've discussed their views on where they see the actions of the department and my actions of ministers over the last 2 years. And some are critical, undoubtedly, and some recognise the steps that have been taken. But certainly at the time that the issue came up and the time when, following the appearance of Professor Daly before the seminar in Oxford, the key issue that survivors who contacted me, who wrote to me, was their key issue was their words weren't being reflected in the historical record. That isn't something that I'm bringing. That I thought, that was something that survivors were saying to me in their communications, that they didn't feel that their experience, they had gone to the trouble, to the trauma, the upset of going before the confidential committee, and all their input had been boiled down to a short paragraph that in certain cases wasn't even just their own story. So it's on that basis that I'm bringing forward this proposal. This proposal and the steps would be, we'd seek government approval for this proposal, then it would go to a consultation, and after that consultation, we'd come back and provide it with the legislative basis. So there will be an opportunity for survivors to give their view in terms of what we're trying to achieve here, in terms of this being one element of the National Records and Memorial Centre. But this is a response to what I heard from survivors at this time.
So when you say that you didn't bring a proposal to Cabinet, apologies if I was wrong about that. I heard you speaking about it on the radio, so you certainly brought the proposal to the national airwaves. And I'm wondering, like, obviously at that time, I remember speaking on the radio afterwards and saying, well, what will the Minister do then if we've got 2 reports? So one report that says there's no evidence of illegal adoption, there's no evidence of incarceration, all of the things that we know happen, and then presumably if another independent person examined the report through a human rights lens, they would very likely find that there is evidence of all of those illegalities and crimes, you know, occurring in these institutions. Everybody knows that they happened anyway. And I believe that you went on the radio that day in good faith because you thought that there should be an independent review, because like all of us, you recognise the need for that. And then to say that the key issue in you changing your mind is, oh, well, because from my engagement with survivors, their main issue is, you know, that their experiences are not recognised enough, and that will be done through the National Archives or whatever. Like, anyone else can tell you, or we're the committee for the department, that isn't the only concern people have. People want justice as well, you know? And like the findings of those reports being so fundamentally flawed has a really profound impact outside of experiences not being documented, which is also really important, but on things like redress. So it's not fair to just pick one thing that was important to people and scrap the plan that would actually provide people with justice, that acknowledges what people went through was horrific. That's what's missing. And you are unilaterally then deciding that that's what's best because of some engagements that you've had. Like, what about what the committee has to say about this issue? We've spent so much time as a committee engaging with people about this particular issue. It's not fair or okay to say this, and I don't mean to trivialise the situation by explaining this, but like, if the situations that happened in a mother and baby home happened now in somebody's home or in another state-run institution, there would be the normal processes of justice and laws that would carry out, and people would there would be accountability and there would be justice and all of those things. That's always been denied to people who were in these institutions. And this whole process that's gone on for the last 2 years has just been a really long-winded way of doing that again. So when people wanted that independent review, when you wanted that independent review, you know it was for more than just recognising their experiences. Of course there's that too, that's an important part of justice. But can you at least acknowledge that you understood that it was for more than that? And perhaps it is because other state actors have shut down your proposals, but we need to know what's happening here, because this is just another kind of chapter in a really long tale of denying people just the basic fundamental principles of justice that we have in a country that has a democracy.
Okay, Minister, and then we have to move on to our next speaker then. So.
Well, in seeking to respond to the wide range of issues that survivors have raised with me, raised with this committee, we've sought to address the specific issues that survivors have raised, the specific things that they want to see done. And I've spoken already about information and tracing, which has been delivered by the government. I've spoken about the institutional burials bill that has been delivered by the government. The redress scheme, the final draft will be brought to Cabinet shortly. And speaking specifically on redress and the point you made on redress, like, the government has been very clear. Our redress proposals were not fixed on what the Commission's suggestions in terms of redress were. The government's response to redress was a much broader one and encapsulates a much greater number of survivors and former residents than anything that the Commission would have put forward. So I think it is important to recognise that fact, that the government, and it's something I've always said, the Commission's report is one piece of this, but it is only one piece. And in terms of what can happen now, we've already seen analysis, independent analysis undertaken of elements of the Commission's report by the group of academics who undertook the review and the redrafted executive summary by the Special Rapporteur for Child Protection in terms of the human rights analysis of the Commission's report. So the Commission's report, as I say, is just one piece of the state's response. And my focus and the department's focus has been on meeting the explicit needs of survivors in terms of the range of issues that they've set out.